Good morning, it's 11:05. Police in Brussels have shot a man after a massive manhunt for the gunman who killed two Swedish nationals on Monday evening.
Yes, the man was shot in a cafe in the Sherbrooke neighbourhood, a local media has reported.
Brussels has been on its highest terror alert after Monday's attack, and we're joined now by Dr. Alan Mendoza, who's the Executive Director at the Henry Jackson Society. Good morning, Alan. Good to see you. I was just saying earlier there was a terrible inevitability about this attack in Brussels. I think we've all been on tenterhooks since the weekend to see if there would be an Islamic-inspired attack upon Westerners. How did you receive the news?
Well, yes, I'm afraid, unfortunately, it was to be expected. And you'll know before this attack even, although this was in Belgium, France had already gone to a very high terror alert because of a stabbing of a teacher, which wasn't necessarily linked, but was, linked to, in a way because of the origin of the attack. And it was only inevitable that this would occur elsewhere. And I think many European countries now have raised terror levels on the grounds that they fear some kind of Islamist attack on other targets. And this was, of course, a completely unprovoked target. Two football fans shot dead. So anything could occur. And I think the European authorities in different countries are gearing up to more such incidents.
I want to know your opinion, Alan, on the BBC's position on this, because when this story broke last night, they very quickly put on their website that it was a terror attack after these two people were killed. It was brought to the attention of the BBC that they hadn't called the Hamas attack terror-related when 1,300 Jewish people had been murdered. What's your take on that particular position of the BBC?
Well, I think it's extraordinary what the BBC did, having spent, nearly 2 weeks now arguing that a blatant terrorist atrocity in Israel was not terrorism, claiming it was just sort of they had to remain neutral. Within seconds of this terrorist attack occurring, they were very happy to use the term terror in the title of their piece. It seems to me the BBC have very grave questions to answer about what their real position is on these subjects, and indeed questions about their neutrality or otherwise, and why they would take a side when Jewish victims are involved, when they wouldn't do and haven't done in the past when it's anyone else, basically.
Alan, we know a little bit about the suspect in last night's terror attack. The Prime Minister in Belgium has said the suspect's a man of Tunisian origin. We believe him to be 45 years old. He had been living in the country illegally. He unsuccessfully sought asylum in Belgium back in November 2019. And it seems as though he's been living illegally in Belgium and then has committed this most awful offence. A video is also circulating online where he claimed himself as a member of Islamic State. Is there a pattern emerging in terms of someone who unsuccessfully sought asylum and then went on to commit such an act?
Well, we've always known that this is a possibility. We've always known that if you are unable to track who is in your country, unable to sort of scan them and understand where they are, and crucially, by the way, lose them once they have had their asylum denied, as happened in the case in the UK, if you recall, in Liverpool, when mercifully nobody got killed, but clearly it was another such example. What you end up with is an obvious threat, an obvious national security threat. It's why we have been arguing for some time that the whole asylum process needs to be managed much more carefully, much more rigorously, why there is obviously a clamour within government to get control of it, because it's not simply an issue when it comes to sort of economics and development and issues like that. It's also a national security one. You just don't know who's coming in, what they might believe, and indeed what terrible things they might commit in the pursuit of a twisted ideology.
Now, Alan, you're an expert on Islamist terrorism. Your think tank does huge amounts of research into this. Of course, you can't speak to this particular suspect and this particular terrorist attack, but what is the ideology behind what we see when we see Islamist-inspired terrorist attacks on the West?
Well, I can speak to this a little bit for this attack because we've had some detailing. It appears the authorities, know that he was inspired by ISIS, and felt he was acting as a soldier for ISIS, as it were. He was radicalized by watching things online. Essentially, what you see here are people who believe that by committing acts of violence against non-believers, they are somehow hastening the advance of the global caliphate. Basically, that's what we're talking about when it comes to ISIS-style ideology. And they also want to commit atrocities in order to, I suppose, strike fear into the hearts of the non-believers in order to again ensure that their twisted ideology gains strength. And the last reason for doing it is they tend to receive adherents, would you believe, for these sorts of crimes. If they're publicized in the right way as far as terrorists are concerned, they get other people volunteering and being inspired by it to commit more crimes. So it's one of these awful, vicious circles where the more it happens, the more it will still happen yet more. And that's why it's always a challenge for the security services to stay on top of it and to stop even one atrocity happening, because if one happens, you can be sure that, like buses, unfortunately, others will be inspired to follow, and there'll be others as well behind them.